My guest for the hour, Pastor J.D. Farag from Calvary Chapel, Kaneohe, Hawaii, and of course Amir Sarfati, beholdisrael.org. And as I left my last segment, I said I wanted to pick up on a couple of more topics immediately, just in the interest of time. Pastor J.D. Farag, throw the question out to you because you made the statement. I heard you say it. We are in the last hour of human history, and I think if we're a headline watcher, people like us can probably connect those dots, make that kind of a conclusion. Is there anything specifically that leads you to say that we could be in the last hour of human history?
Yes, both foundationally and specifically. First, foundationally, the certainty with which I believe that we are in the last hour, the last moments of world history as we know it, is anchored in what Jesus said in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24. And Amir referred to this particular prophecy, but also in Luke 21, verses 29 through 32. And I want to read Mark's Gospel, chapter 13, verses 28 through 30, concerning the parable of the fig tree. Jesus said, "Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is near. So ye in like manner, when ye shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, that this generation shall not pass till these things be done." To me, that started the clock. Then, fast forward to the year 2017. Now think about this. I believe with all of my heart that this is the last hour because the mathematical odds, just by sheer virtue of the numbers statistically, everything coming to pass simultaneously on the world stage geopolitically is off the charts. I'm no mathematician, but to me, there is an unstoppable momentum of sorts, such that I cannot see a scenario in which the pause button could be pushed. Rather, I see the fast forward button being pushed instead. I liken it to the analogy of something having a shelf life. Bible prophecy has a shelf life, and I'll explain why I say it that way. 10 years ago, we could not have the discussion that we're having today. And I would submit that even 10 years from now, we cannot have the discussion that we're having today. In other words, we are at a tipping point, a breaking point, a boiling point, and there's only so much time that the proverbial iron can be struck when it's hot. In other words, there's an expiration. Could we see, as Amir mentioned, what we're seeing now today with Russia and Iran? Look how fast everything is moving. Can you imagine 10 years from now? I don't think that it's even plausible that we could see what we're seeing today, 10 years from today.
I think it's interesting that nobody is even asking anymore, what is Russia and Iran doing in Syria, right a mile away from Israel? Yes. It's not even a question anymore. The world got used to it.
Yes, got used to it.
Everybody wakes up in the morning. It's easy to attack Trump. It's easy to attack Israel. But nobody's asking the question, how come two sovereign countries are inside another one on the border with another one? I mean, it's almost like, Ezekiel had no problem, describing that. But the world, it's almost like the world believes Ezekiel because it's so accurate, but they don't want to get the message. It's like, yes, Iran should be here. Yes, Russia should. It's almost like everybody got used to it. Well, nobody's even asking that question. Nobody asked Russia to go out. Nobody demands Iran to go out. If anything, the only two elements in Syria that are actually fighting each other about, who gets where, when, and what, is Russia and Iran. Russia didn't want Iran to go into Aleppo, lest Iran will declare victory that is not hers. The point is, the world got used to it. And just as JD just said, we could have not talked about this 10 years ago, not even 3 years ago. And yet now we're talking about it so naturally, as if, yeah, of course, they're there. They should be there, yes. They should be there because the Bible predicted that they will be there.
Right, but Amir, part of the problem is the churches are silent about these issues. And you state, you hear from people in 200 countries are writing you. The remnant from 200 countries writing you, because the remnant has a hunger and a thirst to understand these things. But most of the churches, not all of them, and pastors, don't hear me saying all of you, too many are preaching a very fluffy gospel or a very anti-Israel gospel. Let me read an email I just got. I'm reading just a couple of lines of an email, not going to identify anybody, other than it's from Cindy, and she says, I emailed my pastor to see if he planned to preach on Revelation or the importance of supporting Israel or the issues of the day. He responded no to the book of Revelation because of not having a strong understanding, and to Israel he said, this is a tougher question since I'm still in process here. And he says, my understanding of Israel has changed over the years of biblical study, and I no longer believe they are in any sense God's people now unless they come to know Jesus as Savior. So my understanding is this is a church that once had truth, no longer has this truth, and if you knew how many emails and communications I get that sound like this, I think my audience would be quite stunned, or maybe not. Maybe they've encountered the same thing. Pastor Farag, you're a pastor. Is this pretty common?
Sadly, it is. This is commonplace. And how ironic that this pastor would, in fact, say what he said about the book of Revelation, and even more specifically Israel, when in Revelation chapters 2 and 3, you have 7 letters to 7 churches, one of which is lukewarm, and another of which Jesus writes and says to them that those who think they are Jews and are not, and he talks about this church. You have the first church leaving, not losing, leaving their first love, the church of Ephesus. You have Smyrna, Pergamum, you have Thyatira, you have Sardis, you have the church of Philadelphia, and then you have that church of Laodicea, where Jesus is actually on the outside knocking to get in. I know we use that verse in evangelizing. Behold, Jesus stands at the door and knocks, but if you really think about it, he's knocking on the door of a church, and I believe he is knocking on the door of that church, of that pastor who is saying that, wanting to come back in and sup with them and them with him. And that to me is sadly ironic.
Folks, if you'd like to come out and meet Pastor J.D. Farag, Amir Sarfati, Dr. Mark Hitchcock, Michelle Bachman, do so this coming fall, Saturday, October the 7th, Grace Church, Eden Prairie, Minnesota, just outside Minneapolis. It's 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., no cost, no registration. We had quite a crowd last fall. We had about 6,000 people in a venue for 4,300, largest crowd that church had ever seen fill the particular premises, because, again, and they come from across the country, even some from out of the country, because the remnant is very hungry, the remnant wants truth, the remnant knows that finding truth, well, it's just kind of a difficult thing today with our politically correct world. We also were right before our November election last October. Gentlemen, I also teased, and I want to follow up on that, because, Amir, you have a burden to teach people about an event that is imminent. The Bible says it could happen today, and that would be the rapture. Again, many churches either haven't been prepared to teach on this, don't want to teach on it, consider it divisive, whatever. God has obviously given you a burden to teach on this. What kind of response are you getting?
Well, I get all sorts of responses. I mean, and some of them quite shocking, because although the word rapture is not there in the scriptures, because, you know, when you read it in English, you obviously read the English translation of the Greek. And the Greek word is harpazo, and it is there. People still believe that if the word rapture is not there, then there is no rapture. And in fact, it's hard for people to grasp even the thought that they are going to lose gravity and they will be taken up in the air. Sounds too weird for them. It sounds too unrealistic. And what's so sad about this is that they don't have a problem reading the Bible and seeing all the miracles that Jesus did. They don't have a problem seeing how Jesus himself ascended to heaven. They don't have a problem reading about Enoch and about Elijah. But whenever it comes to the blessed hope, the amazing promise to the church for them to be taken out of that hour of trial that is about to come. Namely, we will be out before it will come. All of that, then that's when it's getting too weird and we can't take that one. You know, it's funny because it seems like they believe the world more than they believe the Word. How can you read 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, or how can you read 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 51, 50? How can you read all of these things and not see clearly that we will be caught up and we'll meet him in the air and he will take us and we will be with him. So where he is, we will be also. And then from that moment, we will always be with him. For me, this is the single most important thing that a Christian should know in these last days, that there is hope. I mean, we just talked about terrible things. We just talked about how the world is going crazy. We just talked about wars and rumors of wars, about pestilences and earthquakes, and we talked about so many things. But for us, these are just small things compared to the great promise that we have to be taken out of here. And how can I be only dealing with the bad things and not deal with the single most important thing for me as a Christian, which is that I'm about to be out of here. Out of here before God is going to judge this unrighteous world. Out of here before the Antichrist will unleash all of his demonic plans. Plus, I think that one of the reasons people don't really deal with the rapture is that their lack of understanding also of the book of Revelation, which causes them to think that, Christians should stay here throughout the tribulation, and then thus there is no rapture. What's the point of being raptured when you have to go through the tribulation? So when people are not in the Word and they're too much in the world, then the Word becomes just too weird to them. And I've heard so many different variations of what the rapture is all about. Even someone just told me that he believes that we will be taken up to the air, but not go all the way to heaven, but just usher Jesus' coming in back to earth. In other words, we are the welcoming party or committee for Jesus to come back. So many unbelievable things. And I think that there is a very, very poor teaching of that particular thing. And so we need to give the hope for the people. I believe that doom and gloom is part of what's coming up. We know that. But there is a great hope, the blessed hope, as Titus chapter 2 says. And so I have no doubt that preaching that hope is causing people excitement and not fear, because fear is not from God. It's certainly not for us. We are definitely watchmen. We know what's coming up. As Ezekiel 33 says, we have to alert, we have to tell people, but at the same time we have a great message of hope, a blessed hope, probably the most important thing that a Christian should know in these last days and in this last hour.